course, I want to start off with saying Shalom. Of course, I got to give all praise to Yahweh, Hashem Yahweh Shai, Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls God, and Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And back for another live stream. Um, it's going to be open panel, but I do have a few subjects that I will speak about if we don't get anybody to click the link. But I wanted to start off with. I actually just maybe 45 minutes ago, I was just on a live stream conversation on the YouTube channel. Oh, what is this place called? Um, Charles Was, I believe, is the name of the channel. Charles Was. That's the name of the YouTube channel that I was just on for an hour or so. And I wanted to just take a little bit and do a little recap from this conversation. This was just astonishing to me. This is basically like average, Christian or average, simple-minded, atheist behavior that I seen, in this stream. It's truly embarrassing for the host of that panel. It's truly embarrassing. I just told him, it's like, hey man, what you need to do is you got to get some type of like timer system going, so you can give everybody a chance to speak, without being, talked over. That's the proper way to do it. At least, from my experience over the years of seeing other channels, and other panel hosts, being able to moderate conversations, such as, let me give you an example. um, what they do over on the channel of Praise I Am, which I've been on his channel a few times. As a matter of fact, we're actually going to be doing a debate over there. I believe it's myself versus Jack Smith, but I might comment on that in a few minutes. But that's going to be like next week or the week after that. So that's going to be interesting. But the way they do it over there is when two people are going to have a discussion about a topic, they'll put all the other people behind the stage. So they're still technically there, but they can't talk. So they can only listen to the conversation. And only the people on stage are able to, to interact with each other. So it would be the two people having the discussion. Then you'd also have the host there to moderate it as well. That's how that channel does it. And they do a very good job at it. I got to give them credit. So Charles Was, he should take some credit and you know, advice, from channels like that on how to, properly run a live stream. But as far as the individual person, which I would believe his name is Charles, which again, this is like the second time I've talked to the guy. He was very respectable to me. He was relatively respectable to me, I would say. I don't have any beef with the guy, but I can't say the same thing for the other simps, the other imbeciles who click the link to have a conversation on there. Um, so I want to address some of the points that was brought up, in that conversation. So, one thing that they were, speaking about is get this. This is laughable. So the one guy is basically like he basically called himself some weird name, like, I think for myselfist or something like that. Like, I believe what comes from my heart, right? Whatever I believe in my heart, that's like the end all be all. So then they asked me, well, let's talk about God, right? Does God have a chosen people, right? Just for instance, he'll ask me a question like, does God have chosen people? And then when I go to respond, and pull up certain verses like, say, Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 14, or Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1, which clearly state that Israel is chosen and above the other nations on the earth, right? But what he'll do is respond and say, well, no, you can't use the Bible. I want you to, answer according to your heart, right? I want you to answer according to you. So think about that. So you're asking me a question. You want me to prove that God has a chosen people, but you don't want me to go to any verses that prove it. You want me to somehow prove that by going by my own personal opinion and how I feel about it. Then I confronted him. I blew his socks off because I pointed out, it's like, you do realize the Bible says that the heart is deceitful above all things, right? So why the hell would one put the book to the side and just go by their own heart to give a judgment or a um an understanding of something that's has to do with the character of God. It's like, why would we not go to the book and see what it has to say about it? So he wants me to answer according to the heart, and I tell him, it's like, hey man, I can give you an answer for how I feel, sure, but that wouldn't be correct going by the scriptures, because as somebody who teaches the scriptures, we're supposed to answer according to what the book says. That's how you properly answer questions that have to do with the God of conversation. So I asked the guy, it's like, so wait a second, let me understand this. So you want to have a conversation about the God of the Bible without using the Bible? It's like, what type of foolishness is that? I mean, seriously, it's like, that is ridiculous. It's like, how can you have a conversation? Like, say, for instance, right? That would be the level of stupidity as saying, let's see, what instance could I give? Say somebody was wanted to have a conversation about a certain character in a fictional story, right? It's like, well, the place we would go to learn about that character and their characteristics and what they did, what the story behind that character is. Obviously, you would read the novel that they're in, right? Or watch the movie if they made the novel into a movie, right? That's how you would learn that person's characteristics and learn what they're all about, right? So that would be like, well, let's talk about such and such without actually ever reading any of the books or ever seeing any of the movies. It's like, well, wait, how the hell are we supposed to do that? But that's like the same line of logic that this guy's using. He's like, well, just go off of your heart. It's like, well, dude, you do realize, for one, the book says that your heart is deceitful above all things. So that's strike one. But then strike two, it's like, well, how the hell could we have a conversation about the God of the Bible without using the Bible? I mean, it's like, that is like such a half-ass thing. It's just astonishing, but that's the level that people are on out here. This cat look within. I think that cat's one of the flunkies from Charles Stream, right? That's one of the flunkies from Charles Stream. So I won't pay attention to that particular individual. And that's a whole other thing, man. A verse that came to mind. I'm nearly paraphrasing, but speaks about if the blind lead the blind, they're both gonna fall into a ditch. Right. So guys over there on Charles was stream, and again, nothing against Charles himself. He's a cool guy, but the characters over on that platform, you know, they're all leading each other to a ditch. They're all the blind leading the blind, right? They're all, a bunch of numbskulls, a bunch of, imbeciles who don't really know anything, and they're all leading each other, in the wrong direction. Like, seriously, what I had a conversation with one of the other people on the panels, which again, I don't remember all these guys' names, but I was talking with another dude on the panel, and he was basically saying, well, everything is fake, but everything is staged. And then I asked him a question. I was like, which by the way, they said that I didn't answer any of their questions, even though every time I would go to speak to give an answer, they would literally talk over me every time, but then they'll accuse me of being the one doing that. But if you actually listen to the conversation, you can see they're actually the one who is talking over me and will not allow me to actually speak. You know what I'm saying? Um, so again, it's just astonishing, but this is the half-assery that certain people are using out here on these platforms. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, going back to what I was saying, um, one guy's like, "Oh, everything's fake." So then I asked the guy, which I was setting him up. I was setting him up because I knew he'd answer the way I want him to, or at least I anticipated him to answer how I wanted him to, which he didn't. I asked him about, okay, so everything apparently is fake on TV. So what about if I turn the news on and like the local news and I see them speak about, that a local person robbed a convenience store up the street earlier this morning. So then I ask him, it's like, so would you then say that's fake too because that's on the TV? And again, according to you, everything on the news is can't be trusted, right? So if somebody steals from the local grocery store, that's all apparently fake. And the dumbass is like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely questionable. That's definitely questionable." It just demonstrates the hypocrisy, of people like that. It's like they don't actually live in the real world. They basically have their own fiction going on, right? They got their own Skylar fiction inside joke. They got their own Skylar fiction going on inside of their own brains. Shout out to anybody that knows what I'm referring to, or that dummy, Skylar fiction. That cat, that dude's literally a 300-pound land whale. I mean, Jesus, man, that's not even. I'm not even being mean. Which I found funny is Skylar fiction. He actually was on Modern Day Debate. That channel, the one I believe they have a couple 100,000 subscribers, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's like 350,000, something like that. If you look them up on YouTube, Modern Day Debate. But Styler Fiction was actually, on there a couple of times, and I couldn't believe this, but believe it or not, I even had to side with Skylar Fiction on one of the topics that they had a debate about. Believe that or not, I had to agree with Skylar Fiction on one of the topics that was brought up in the conversation. And of course, that topic being is, did dinosaurs actually exist or not? Because Skylar Fiction, he's of the position they did exist, but then they brought another conspiracy dude on who was trying to convince people that, well, dinosaurs are all fake. They're to trick people. It's the elite that made them up to scare people or whatever. It's like, nah, that's obviously bullshit. So, I got to give Skylar Fiction, I got to give the dude credit. He actually did very well in that conversation. But that's about all the credit that he gets, because he's basically a dumbass. But hey, even, people that don't know much, even they can be right once in a while about one or two things, right? Same thing with the Christian church. They can be right about one or two things here or there, sure. Like, I'll give you an example. I usually get on the Christian church, but sometimes I have to give them, sometimes I gotta admit that they do certain things that Christ would like, such as, let me give an example, the churches I used to go to, say the Seventh Day Adventist church in Winter Haven, Florida. I won't name the actual one, but just the area. Um, I used to go there, and what they would do is after the church service, they would, hold a potluck meal for everybody from the service, but then they would also invite the homeless people in to have a hot meal with everybody inside of the church building, right? So, they didn't have to do that, but that was a godly thing for them to do, right? Christ is with that type of behavior. So again, sometimes even the Christian church, why mainly they teach false, sometimes they might do things that might actually be good. And I'll give you another example. I can remember, a couple of times when I was growing up, we had problems with the rent, right? So the church would give my family the money to pay our house bill once in a while. I know it happened at least two times, right? They give the $1,500 to us from the church treasury or whatever they call it, and they'd help us pay for what we needed. So again, I got to be fair, right? Because unlike other people out there, I'm a very reasonable person. I'm a fair person, right? So yeah, the Christian church at times they definitely can do godly things. That's certainly true. Now their overall message is against the Bible and is, a misunderstanding, sure. But once in a while they can do good things. That's certainly true. So let me see real quick. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention from the conversation is basically, they asked me, well, why would we even, believe in, the Bible or anything like that? Like, why would you base your belief on this book. Like, why would we believe in any of that stuff? It's like, couldn't that all be a fabrication? And then I tried to explain to the guy, it's like, well, you make it sound like, guys like myself, what we're just like, we read something in a book and then we just repeat that because, well, we don't know why. But factually, we've actually looked into the information to support why we believe, the things that we claim we believe, right? Like, say, for an example, um, I believe that the scriptures are true, and one reason I can say that is because, say, for a example, some of these stories that we read about in the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, there's actually evidence that exists in the world to support that this actually happened. Like, I'll give you an example. You read the Exodus story, right, when the Israelites passed through the Red Sea, we've actually found where it happened. It's at the Nueva beach. If For one, before you even go in the water, it's basically a beach that's landlocked. Like, there's mountains on each side. The only way people could escape from there is to go through the sea because they couldn't go backwards because there's just one small path that leads in between these two mountains. So yeah, a few million people could be locked on that beach with no escape if the Egyptian army was right behind them. So that part fits the story. But wait, there's even more, because if you go down into the waters, people who have, went scuba diving into the Red Sea off the coast of the Nueva beach, and they found ancient remains of Egyptian chariots inside of the Red Sea. So that also correlates with the story, but there's even more, because across the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, there is a mountain over there, which even the government of Saudi Arabia, they know it. This is Mount Sinai. They have the place off limits to the public unless you get special permission to go into this area. But there's a mountain there which fits all the characteristics of Mount Sinai from the Bible story, right? The top is burned. If you go down, there's um there's 12 pillars of stone that are still set up there, and not far from the mountain, right? You can see it just as you come down off the mountain. There's a golden calf altar. Um, there's an altar set up there, right where the golden calf would have been on. And if you look at the etchings into the stone, there's like menorahs and cows, bulls, and Hebrew letters, and among other things that are there. So they have it fenced off from the public, because people that are local to the area, if they see you going around it, they'll suspect you of going there to look for gold. So again, it's a lot of evidence exists to support the authenticity of the Bible. And another one, if you read the Noah's Ark story, right? The Bible says, I believe it's Genesis the ninth chapter. It says that the Noah's Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, right? Ararat over in Turkey, and they found on the mountains of Ararat a 500-foot long ancient boat. So again, it's like, clearly the boat they found, if you look at all the information, it lines up with the story of the Bible, and it's in the exact same location where it said it was. So again, going off of the evidence that I supported, again, there's much more I could mention, but that's just a handful of information that validates that this stuff actually happened. So what reasonable person could say, "Oh, well, that's not enough to even, begin to look into it," right? Like these dummies will literally sit there and say, "Oh, well, that doesn't convince me of nothing. There's nothing to see there, right? It's nothing to see there." It's like, seriously? It's like that doesn't spark your interest at all. It's like, again, even if you're like an atheist or, somebody that doesn't believe in religion, it's like you seriously wouldn't even, take a day or a couple hours, just to look at that information. Like, I mean, seriously, it's just, amazing the level of ignorance and hypocrisy of the average person. They ask me, well, why do you believe in the book? And then when I explain, well, here's a couple evidences that exist, that proves these stories actually happen. And then they don't want to hear that, right? They pretend like, it's not actually true. Like there's not, information that exists out there that validates these stories actually happening in the past. Or I'll give you another one. They found what was it, the remains of ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. They found that by the Dead Sea, right? It's just you can tell by the way these pillars of salt are set up. It's it, again, you can look this up on YouTube for yourself to see what I'm talking about. There's been there's probably a few thousand videos from people throughout the years, venturing down to these remains, and they show you the brimstone and the it's just, again, it's amazing sight to see it if you've never seen that before. Look that up on YouTube. You can find hundreds of videos that depict this. It basically is a destroyed city, a burned city, right? You can see where buildings used to stand, but now they've been turned to dust, basically. So again, it's plenty of evidence that exists to support that, at least in some way, shape, and form, that some of the stories that you read about in the Bible actually, in some fashion, actually happened in the past. So again, I don't understand how any reasonable person could pretend like that's not, factually enough evidence to support that something really did happen, that validates that these stories are true. But again, ignorant people would just be ignorant. That's just the way that that's just the way they are. Hey, somebody has to be the two first, right? Somebody has to be the ones that are going to get judged when, Christ comes back. Somebody has to fulfill that law, right? That's how you got to look at things sometimes. And I might have mentioned this part earlier, but I'll make a quote of it again. The guy was asking me, it's like, well, prove that God has chosen people. Then I explained to him, yeah, there's, certain verses you can go to, Deuteronomy 7:14, Deuteronomy 28:1, that clearly prove that God told the Israelites he would set them above all the other nations on earth. So just by that alone, doesn't that prove that God has favorites, that he favors certain people above others? I mean, seriously, how could that not prove that? Then the dummy is like, oh well, I want you to answer from your heart. Don't use the Bible. Say, well, don't use the Bible. Then why the hell would you ask me a question based on the God of the Bible if I'm not allowed to use the very book to validate those statements? It's like, I don't think I've ever heard anything, more retarded than that before in my life. I mean, seriously, that's just stupid. Well, to be fair, I mean, one thing that I found even more laughable than that, more stupid, I should say, is how Perry Green, he'll sit there and tell you that, well, the entire Bible is literal, right? The entire Bible, every single word should be taken as literal. It's like, really? Every word in the Bible should be taken literal according to you? He's like, yep, 100%. Then you ask him, well, what about in Daniel, right? When it talks about the beast, it says that there was a lion who had eagle's wings. So does that mean that there actually was a griffin that existed, or is that verse parabolic and metaphorical? Because Perry Green, now he's put in a box because he said that every verse is literal. So that means, according to you, that there literally is a lion who has eagle's wings, according to the Bible. Clearly, that's not what the verse is talking about. It's clearly, symbolic metaphor of speech of something else. But they just use these terms because, again, it's a metaphorical allegory. It represents something, but it's not supposed to be taken literal for face value. So if he agreed that that verse is not literal, so now he basically put his foot in his mouth because now he's agreeing that the Bible is not always literal, which again, his whole slogan that his whole channel is based around is it says what it says, right? The Bible means what it says. That's like his whole slogan, right? But then he's going to have to retract that statement if he agrees. Well, yeah, sometimes the Bible says certain things that are not literal. They're not supposed to literally be taken for face value. I mean, there's so many examples of that. It's just laughable how somebody couldn't get that in 2024, right? In 2024, we got dummies out there who still believe that every single word in the Bible should be taken for face value. It means what it says. Okay, so what about when when Christ said to the people that were listening to him teach in what is that, John the 6th chapter? He told them to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Obviously, that's not literal. It actually represents what he told the apostles at the Last Supper, and you can read about that in Matthew 26. But he repeated the same phrase. He said, drink my blood and eat, um, drink my blood and eat my flesh. And he explained to him the blood represents the wine that you're drinking, and his flesh represents the bread, the unleavened bread that you're eating, right? That's clearly what that parable means. But in John 6, it doesn't go into that breakdown. So, going by Peregrine's logic, he would have to say that Christ was teaching cannibalism in John 6 because everything's supposed to be literal according to him. So, again, I mean, this guy he's locked in a box, right? This guy's, metaphorically speaking, he's locked in a box and he has no way out of this because he either has to admit that he's wrong, which by the way he would never will do, or he's clearly just wrong. I mean, there is no way that he can get around that. Clearly, not every verse in the Bible is literal. Only a moron would believe that. Let me give you another example. The Bible says that you would know a person by their fruits, right? A good tree cannot bring forth corrupt fruit, and a corrupt tree can't bring forth good fruit. Now, what is that a metaphorical meaning for? Clearly, that means that you know a person by their deeds. A good person can't bring forth, bear with me a second. A good person, can't live in in sin and claim to be a believer. But then you can't have a a bad person who, is claiming to live godly. I mean, they don't mix. It doesn't mix. So again, the Bible's saying you would know a person by the way that they live. You know a man by his actions. That's basically what the book is saying in a metaphorical language in the particular example I give. I see I see someone named the preacher down there, but I know that's somebody made a stock account because they thought that'd be funny. That's clearly not Perry Green down there. I mean that bum's probably sleeping right now. Oh, another thing I wanted to talk about. Me and Nick, right, from Signs and Wonders. We actually just did a live stream together yesterday around this exact time, believe it or not. It was pretty good conversation. It was pretty good conversation. Hell, I introduced him to that channel. What's this guy? Concave Earth Christians, aka Samuel Owens. He didn't know about that guy, so he got a good kick out of that. Samuel Owens, right? The guy who says that he's Jesus Christ. And by the way, he says that he's from the tribe of Edom, right? Samuel Owen, he calls himself the roaring lion from the tribe of Edom. Wait a second. What the hell? You're the roaring lion from the tribe of Edom? Wait, so you're Jesus Christ. So Jesus Christ is from the tribe of Edom. What the hell? The Bible says that Christ was a Israelite. What's the scripture? Hebrews 7:14. It's evident that the Lord sprang out of the tribe of Judah. So that's I knocked his socks off with that one. I mean, there is no way around that. Which clearly anybody that believes that that's Christ is just has a few screws loose up in the head just to begin with. But seriously, now that's a dilemma for himself. It's like, wait, so you claim to be Jesus Christ, but yet you say Jesus Christ is from the tribe of Edom, but yet the Bible literally says that Christ was from the tribe of Judah. So that's a knockout right there. I mean, this guy should delete his whole channel based on that one thing alone. I mean, think about how blasphemous that is. Which, first of all, God says that He hates the nation of Edom and that He's going to eradicate them from off the face of the earth in Obadiah 1:18, right? So think about the blasphemy here. So He's saying that Jesus Christ, right, the Son of God, which we call Yahushua, but He was from the tribe of Edom. Uh, that's not true. I mean, again, it's like all you got to do is read the scriptures. It's like, wait a second. Just putting, for the sake of argument, if we put Hebrews 7:14, which by the way absolutely blows his ass out of the water with that, because it clearly says Christ was from the tribe of Judah. But if we just put that to the side for just a moment, how do we deal with the fact that people called him the King of the Jews, right? And he was considered among the people to be a Jewish man, right? So if he was the King of the Jews, well, why the hell would he be an Edomite? So you mean to Samuel Owen, you mean to tell me that the King of the Jews is from the tribe of Edom? I mean, it's like, come on, this is just comical. I mean, shit, I thought it was funny when I first heard the guy call himself Jesus Christ. That was funny by itself. But then a few weeks later, saw the guy say, "Well, Christ is from Edom, and I'm the roaring lion from the tribe of Edom." Like, what the hell? It's like, where the hell do you guys get this nonsense from? I mean, damn. Me and Nick, we were joking around about it. It's like, it's just astonishing, the amount of, false teachers that you got, out here, man. On one hand, you got people claiming to be Jesus. You got people claiming to be the Holy Ghost in human form. You got people saying that, trying to convince people that we're living in heaven right now. You got people like Perry Green in the chat down there saying, "Hey, well, I don't commit any sin ever, right? I don't commit any sin ever, right?" ETT, Bible Defender, Nick, um, Sacramento Truth Movement, all those guys. Again, this is Perry Green speaking. All those guys are wicked sinners and they do everything wrong and they sin. But I, Perry Green, I never do anything wrong. I'm perfect how I am. Meanwhile, dummies sitting there smoking cigarettes on my street. It's like, that that's harmful for your health, man, right? But you don't sin though, right? You don't sin. It's just amazing, but this is the nonsense that you're dealing with out here. These are the people that you're dealing with out here. There's no other way to, there's no nicer way to put it. Just, good example of, people leading other people astray, right? Like I quoted earlier, the verse says that, if the blind lead the blind, they're both going to fall into a ditch, right? And this is a perfect example of that. They're leading the people that listen to them, they're leading them all astray, right? They're leading them down the wrong path, and of course, that's definitely, a sad thing, but that's what we're doing out here. We're giving people the true message of the Bible. That's what we're giving, and people don't want to hear that. Why? Because for one, people want that feel good doctrine. That's why the churches, that's why they're, bringing in that money, because the people are going to those churches because they like what the pastors are sitting there telling them. They like to hear that bullshit that they're being, told in these churches. That's what the people want to hear. People don't want to hear the message that Christ actually taught, and what he taught was, you got to live according to the teachings from the Old Testament. That's what you got to, live your life. You got to operate around that. You can't sit around and, claim you believe and then live like a wicked sinner. You can't do that. Oh, and this ties back to what I quoted like 20 minutes ago. I said like next week or a week after that, we're gonna do a discussion. Um, I myself and a dude named Jack Smith on the YouTube channel called Praise the I Am. I believe they had like 15,000 subscribers over there, right? But we're gonna set up a conversation um about what basically in a nutshell what the conversation is about is dealing with salvation. Does a person just have to believe and then they get like free grace? And basically what free grace means is that all you got to do is believe, and then by you believing that Christ died for you, that automatically saves you, and you as a person, you don't have to do anything. Whereas my side of the argument, they call it works salvation, but that's a little bit misleading because we're not saying that you're saved just by doing good works, but they call it work salvation, which again, that's not exactly true because we're not teaching that you're saved by doing good works by itself. First and foremost, you have to believe to even qualify for salvation. But Christ did teach that you have to have works. That's clearly what Christ taught. There's literally countless verses that support that you have to demonstrate your belief by your actions. Right. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what the conversation is going to be about in a week or two over on Praise I Am's channel. And this is actually the same dude who had a discussion which I reviewed, I believe it was last week. I believe he was the guy that went against Dirty Varmint. Again, you can go to my videos and look back and you'll see when I'm talking about it. I did a commentary on the discussion between Dirty Varmint and Jack Smith, and I believe it was A's Philosophy versus somebody else, and it was all about the same topic, right? It's just astonishing to me how all these dudes, they literally have in some way, shape, or form they trick themselves into believing that well, I'm good as long as I believe. Like Perry Green, right? Kind of like Perry Green. Basically, they're like mini Perry Greens, except they're not as delusional as Perry Green, right? That's basically what these cats are that I'm referring to. Basically, they're like, well, I just believe in Jesus and I'm good, right? I'm saved. It's like, well, dummy, it's like, so you're saved. You do realize, well, for one, how many Christians are in the world? They don't know that. The answer is 2.6 billion. If you do a quick Google search on that. But here's the kicker, though. If you go up to 500 million of them, at least 150,000, 150,000, 150 million, excuse me, 150 million, if not more, would say, well, yeah, I'm sure that I'm going to be saved and that I'm going to heaven when I die. That's what they would tell you. So you mean to tell me that all those people who said it, they're sure they're going to go there when they die, they're all going to go there because they said they're sure they are? And if you say no, well, who's to say that you're not part of the number that is deceived into believing that? It's like, are we going to skip over the fact that the Bible says that God chose 144,000, which, by the way, are from all the tribes of Israel? Which it is true that there's also a great number of people behind those that'll be saved as well. Sure, it doesn't explain to us how many people are in that great number. It could be a couple million. Say it could be 2 million, could be 3 million. Nobody knows that, so that's just speculation. But um bear with me a second. But again, it's certainly nowhere near 150 million people that are going to be saved. Shit, there's barely even um a million Hebrew Israelites around, right? People that or even people that call themselves Christians, most of them don't even know what that word means. Like I was talking to a dude the other day, and he told me, again, this is his words, not mine. He literally told me, well, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in the Bible. It's like, wait a second, what? I wanted him to explain that to me, which, by the way, he didn't. But think about that. It's like, so I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in the very book that his story's in. It's like, wow, that's pretty weird if I could say so for myself. So the Bible is a fabrication, but yet you believe in the character that's in the Bible, but yet the Bible itself is false. I mean, it's like, have you ever heard such nonsense like that before? I mean, that's just ridiculous, but this just demonstrates, the low vibration that the average person is on out here. It just demonstrates the low vibration that that individual is on. Their brain's not capable of logically, thinking for itself. Again, it pisses you off to see, certain of these, you know, re- these individuals out here who, clearly got no idea what the hell they're talking about. But the people listening to them, they'll just sit there and, eat up everything they're saying. And again, you see it on all these different channels, whether it's, Christian channel, Deacon Destruction Mode channel. Those dummies in the chat, they don't really know shit about nothing. They're just repeating the bullshit they hear because, well, they don't know any better. That's again, I can't say that about all of them, of course, but a good number of people on the chat, that's what they're doing. They're just there for, well, some of them are there for entertainment, but those who actually are there trying to learn, a lot of those guys are just repeating certain things that they hear because it rubs them off the right way, right? They like to hear those, the sayings that they're hearing. So that's why they stick with, certain groups like that. Same thing with, Christian YouTubers as well, right? Or Muslim YouTubers as well. Again, there's so many, you know, categories that you could mention, with this, where they have a set audience who just, repeats what they hear the speakers say. And again, it's truly ridiculous. Hey, this one guy, I see you in the chat, man. Did you get to see that conversation that me and Jill did? I believe it was like at least 2 weeks ago now, if not longer. Me and Jill, we did it like I believe it was a 2 hour conversation. Me and Jill, we talked about one, the Trinity. We talked about Romans 13. We talked about servitude. We talked about I believe there's a few other subjects that might have been been brought up in the conversation as well, like maybe reincarnation. It was an interesting conversation. Which I usually criticize Jill, because and I still do today, right? Jill is a dummy. He doesn't really know a whole lot. He's just a simple-minded person. He's just very simple-minded. Like the dummy literally told me, "Well, I believe that the government is for the people and by the people." It's like, really, what? You believe that the government is for you and by you? It's like, dummy, you really can't see the difference that the people over there are stealing your money and then they tell you they represent you and then your dumbass literally just sits there and says, "Oh, okay, I believe it." But then you turn around and call yourself a trooper. I mean, get the hell out of here. And then he says, well, the Bible supports it, right? The Bible supports it, even though Romans 13 is not talking about obeying the government. Literally, if you read verse 4, it says this is God's minister. So, dummy, you really mean to tell me you don't know what a minister is? I mean, come on. This is preschool here. It's just astonishing. But, these are the guys that go around, on YouTube, thinking they know shit about something. It's astonishing. These are the cats that you're dealing with out. Let's see. This one guy said, he said the preacher is perfectly sinful and unholy. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, I mean, again, Perry Green, I told Nick the other day that, if I was to get the dictionary and look up, a word like, sin, or I look up unholy, or I look up false teachers, or, among other key words that I could look up, right? um, there would be a picture of Perry Green next to it. Like, you have those dictionaries that put a picture of something so you can see like a real life example of what that thing is, right? Like if you look up the word apple, they'll put a picture of an apple. You look up ATV, they'll put a picture of a flat screen next to it, right? You look up false teacher, they'll put a picture of Perry Green and Apostle Tim in the background behind it. Yeah, you're cool, man. You don't have to hop on right now. You're good. But but yeah, it's like seriously, Tim and Perry Green, right? They would be the picture that would pop up in the dictionary, right, for false teachers. Let me see. You're saying you can hop on in a half an hour from now? I might still be live. I can't say for 100%, but I could still be on in a half an hour. It will just depend. But we'll see, man. We'll see. Let me see. Yeah, but going back to that conversation from earlier, man, it just really caught me off guard. These are the type of dummies that are, apparently, supposed to be knowledgeable, but yet they literally, will contradict themselves in almost everything they say, and they won't acknowledge the hypocrisy. Like, let me give you another example. A subject we also brought up in the conversation, which we talked about it a few days ago when it went on Charles was channel, but it got brought up again today. It was about the September 11th, right, 2001. I got to use a little bit of a coded language because YouTube doesn't like certain words on this platform, right? But from now on, you know what I'm referring to for what I'm going to say next, right? So we were talking about that, and the topic came up was, real planes used? My position is yes, of course, those were real airplanes that were used in that event. And these dummies say, well, they were all fake. They were all just CGI that they put on TV or put on these videos. And then, I cut them to shreds because I asked them, it's like, okay, well, you mean to tell me, like, honestly, use your brain for a couple of seconds. You mean to tell me that all of the thousands of people that had some type of camera device with them that, and again, this is New York City, right? The tourist attraction, the tourist capital of the world, right? There's at least what 10,000 plus visitors there from other countries every single day. And that's probably even a small amount of the people coming from all over the world every single day to visit New York City, right? So you mean to tell me that out of all the thousands of people that pulled out their phones or cameras, because again, I know it was the early 2000s, to record. You mean to tell me all of that was fake and all staged? Seriously? There's literally people out there who've seen it with their own eyes, man. You mean to tell me that's all fake? Now, again, if you want to talk about, if there's a bigger conspiracy overall with it, sure, that's an entire different conversation. But to sit there and pretend like, well, the planes were not real, it's like, no, that's just retarded. That's just not true. They were real. And again, conspiracy beyond that is a conversation worth having. But I mean, you're just being stupid if you sit there and say, well, oh, well, they were all fake. I mean, that's just not true. That just isn't true. Real things happen in the world sometimes. Not everything on the TV or on the news is all CGI and fake. I mean, real things actually happen. Like, let me give you an example, right? Some of these dummies will tell you that, well, we you see on the news, they show the pictures of the trains that are, transporting, like tanks or whatever over to Ukraine. They'll say, oh, well, that's fake. That's all fake. It's like, nah, sometimes that stuff is certainly real. Again, it's truly a scary thing to me how, to think about how some people have really been so dumbed down over the years where they literally think that everybody is out to get them. Like they literally think that when they turn on the news, everything on there is all fake. Now, sure, some things on there are questionable, absolutely, but that doesn't mean that literally every news story is a fabricated story. That doesn't mean that. And again, you're talking to somebody who watched Russian vids, right? RV Truth for 8 years, if you know who I'm talking about. And again, I call him out. He's clearly, lost his marbles on certain topics. The dummy's out there literally saying that. Um, Remember that debate that just happened? I believe it was like a month ago between his two well-known Christian pastors. They were having a debate about the flat Earth, and then David Weiss was there, and Jeranism was watching the live stream, giving his commentary on it. This was a big event for the flat earthers, right? This was a big event. that was happening, and all Russian vids can sit there and do. And again, this was a very good debate between them. I sat there and watched the entire 4.5 hour live stream of this discussion. It was a very good one until the end. Right, the end was a little bit funny to watch. Because the other pastor got mad and kicked the other one out of the church, and that's how the event ended. But for the first couple of hours, it was actually really good, really decent. But then this guy, RV Truth, all he can do is sit there and say, "Oh, it's all fake, right? It's all staged. They're all in on it." And that, I think to myself, it's like, well, what the hell are they all in it for exactly? Like, I mean, I watched the debate. It's like the pastor that was supporting the flat Earth argument, which is the same side of the argument the RV Truth is on. It's like he didn't make the flat Earth look bad. I mean, he actually did a relatively good job. Sure, here or there he might have made a mistake or two on his presentation, sure. But overall, 95% of the information was sound. So it's like I don't get how he could sit there and say, "Oh, well, that was all, a staged event to make Flat Earth look bad." It's just truly shocking, but it just demonstrates to you that, some people are just living in their own fantasies that they make up. And again, I'll tell you before, bear with me just a second. DJ Spin, is that a channel you're talking about, man? What channel are you referring to? Because I was actually yesterday, I was on a couple of live stream channels. So if you put the name of it down there, I might remember the one you were talking about. I was on, I believe, two or three different YouTube channels yesterday, so I don't remember the names. Um, but what me and Jay do sometimes, we'll just look up at like a term you type in on YouTube. Say, for instance, you type in open panel or StreamYard, and you click the live button, and the um, it will bring up all the people who are live, right? And then you can scroll through and see if there's anything interesting, and then sometimes you find good ones, or sometimes you find good ones to have a conversation on. Sometimes they're shitty ones, but sometimes they actually can be decent. And that's how we find people to talk to new at times. It works. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about, DJ Spins. Yeah, I was on that channel the other day. Let me read this real quick. It's time to wake up. Said Project North Woods describes the use of remote control full size jets. Well, again, it's what I'm saying, and I haven't heard of that. Um, the thing you said there, I haven't heard of that. But what these guys are saying is that they just weren't real altogether. Like they were actually like holograms, or they were edited into the footage. They didn't actually exist at all. That's what these guys are saying, which is completely ridiculous and just isn't true. Again, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But again, it demonstrates to you that some of these people on the internet that call themselves, like truthers, or, searching for truth, and, think they figured all these things out by doing a couple Google searches, or just, watching a couple YouTube videos, which again, there could be some good information, and I'm sure, but we got to acknowledge that some of these people that put these videos together, they deliberately hide some information and don't add it to the video that might discredit what they're given. They just cherry pick a couple things and say, well, that's it. That's the all the information, right? Nothing else to see. Kind of like how these dudes say that dinosaurs are fake, right? What they'll do is they'll say, well, you know, we don't see the word dinosaur used in any type of writing before the 1800s. So, see, that shows that they didn't exist. It's like, dude, you do know people didn't use that term before the 1800s, because the term dinosaur was invented in like the 1840s, right? You can do a Google search on that. But like the 1840s, the term dinosaur, first came into existence. So of course, you're not going to see writings or scrolls or whatever from before that use that word, because it didn't exist. Same reason why you won't see the word America in a scroll from say 1600 years ago because the word didn't exist yet, right? Or you might not even see. I'll give an even better example. You're not going to see the word reincarnation used in, say, the Bible or other ancient religious texts because that word didn't exist at that time. There could have, used other words that might be similar to it, sure, but that particular word didn't exist at that time. So of course you're not going to find it. So to sit there and say, oh, well, this stuff is fake because they would have used it, in the 1600s. It's like, nah, you're just, ignorant and just don't know what you're talking about. That's how a lot of these dudes are, man. Let's see. I just reading over something real quick here. Oh, look at that. Pine Creek's live right now too. That's the same dude that what's this guy? Lazarus, right? Fat Dogs. That's the same dude that Lazarus talked to a couple of months back. That was a good conversation. That was pretty funny. To see um Fat Ass Dogs, that's his name. And he already calls himself Lazarus. He goes by both of those terms. When he went on there with Pine Creek, it was funny. He asked the guy, "Well, are you a believer, right? Are you a Christian?" It's like, Pine Creek laughed. It's like, really, gonna ask me that? It's like you don't realize this is an atheist show where, theists can call in and have conversations. It's like you didn't realize that. It was just laughable. It was just, it was really funny, to see that. But Lazarus, he used to be like one of the minions of Perry Green, months ago. And it was sad because I actually talked to him a year and a half ago, and he was just like a regular Christian, right? He didn't know nothing. Well, he had a little bit more smarts than what he has today. I'll give him that. But then after a couple months went by, then he decided that he was going to convert to believing in what Perry Green says, and then now even to this day, why he claims he's not best friends with Perry, he still agrees with him on the doctrine that yes, all Christ said, you just gotta believe and then you're good. Then, all your sins are covered and you just gotta claim you believe and then that's it. So he believes that, so that's truly sad, to see somebody who at first had a little bit of smarts to him, get entirely tricked by this deceiver, Perry Green. It's definitely, upsetting to see that. Christ warned about that, in the last days, there would be deceivers rising up and deceiving many. And we see plenty of examples. I even mentioned some of the people earlier. You got people saying that they're Christ themselves. You got people saying that Christ already returned. So we're living after that time. The Bible basically is of no importance today because it all already happened. You got people out there saying that the New Testament is fake, only live by the Old Testament. You got people saying that there's a new Messiah on earth over in Israel today. You got, again, there's literally thousands and thousands of different ideologies and, false doctrines that people are teaching out here these days. So Christ was absolutely right when he, gave that warning that, the last times there'd be people going around, teaching these perverted doctrines and doctrines of devil and nonsense like that. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It's time to wake up. I know what you're talking about. I've heard similar things before. Some of those operations. Uh, bear with me for a second here. Let me see something real quick. Not sure how long I'll do the live stream for. Oh, I just went to YouTube and I just saw like a news story that just came out. That's just a coincidence that I just happened to see this as I'm live. And the headline read, mother collapses at funeral suddenly, right after giving a speech, at this funeral. So that, that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing, which I got to use code language because YouTube doesn't like, certain words being used on here. But, that's a whole nother thing that's been happening around the world, right? Sudden adult death syndrome. Look that up, right? People just dropping over dead. Young, young, healthy athletes, they go out for a jog in the morning. Somebody finds them dead on the side of the road. Again, it's like this stuff wasn't happening, 10 years ago. This is just something brand new. I'll leave that idea with you. You can, put the puzzle pieces together yourself. But, you got to start, using your brain to think about these things. It's like, the average person out there, they can't, see through this nonsense. Like, let me give you an example. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who I was trying to have a conversation with. And, I actually here's a story behind this. There's a YouTube channel called Deconverted Man, and basically he's like an atheist now, but years ago he used to be a Christian, right? So now he's deconverted and now he talks shit about, religious people, whatnot, and has, God debates and whatnot. So I contact him and I was like, okay, man, let's, have a conversation, right? Let's, set up a day and time and let's do a conversation. And he was like, "Oh, okay, sure." So we arranged for say 11 o'clock at night, right? So here it is, and again, I have to go out in the cold to go do this. So I go out a few minutes before, so I could be ready for him on time, so I can be polite. And of course, guess what happens? I wait around a half an hour, the guy never shows up. I wait around 45 minutes, the guy never shows up. Wait around an hour and 20 minutes, guy never shows up. Then I contact the guy. It's like, man, did you forget about me or something? And he's like, oh, I'll be there in a little bit. I wait another half an hour. The guy never shows up. So I was like, oh, okay. I message him and tell him, hey, we'll have to do it another time, man. It's getting late over here for me. You know what I'm saying? So he messaged me back the next day and says, well, maybe we should just consider not doing it then. And I think to myself, it's like, what type of scumbag? It's like you literally waste, 2 hours of my life, telling me that you'd be ready to have a conversation, then you never show up and you decide, oh, well, let's just cancel it. So we worked it out and agreed sometime in the future that we'll redo the the schedule and hopefully he won't forget about that next time because I wanted to talk to the dude because it would be funny. But the reason I brought this guy up is he put up a post the other day that was basically like a joke about parents that don't want to give their children certain what's the word I'm looking for? Yabs, right? Certain yabs, read between the code. And it was basically a meme, making fun of people that don't want to give their children those. And then I asked the guy, one of my stock accounts, inside joke, I asked him, um, should I go get my rooster shot? Right, read between the lines, right? Minus Shrek, used to call those things. Should I go get a rooster shot? And he told me, yes, you should absolutely go get them. So I was thinking to myself, it's like, wow, that's just astonishing. A person like that who claims to be a intelligent, rational person, wouldn't even think about questioning the government, right? Somebody who at one point in time actually acknowledged that the Bible was true and that, the powers that be are actually have ill intent. Now all of a sudden he's like, oh, government's there for good. I trust what they tell me. It's like, wow, that's pretty sad to see somebody, completely do a 360 change like that. That's depressing to see that, you know what I'm saying? But but again, just demonstrates that some people out here just don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they get themselves into their own trick bags. So yeah, somebody like that, I mean, that guy's totally what you'd call lost in the sauce. He's totally, a numbskull and doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. To put it into simple, friendly terms. You know what I'm saying? It's it's astonishing. But this is the nonsense that you're dealing with out here. But anyway, I think I'm gonna close the show up with that. It's only an hour today, but I just wanted to touch on some of those some of those points. Right, I was gonna leave it open for people to join, but not everybody's on at this time of the day. So I just went on a little bit of a rant. Yeah, I hear you. It's time to wake up. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's a good point, man. But anyway, I think I'm gonna close the stream up with that, and I'm gonna say shalom.